Is USMLE worth it for non-US IMG? This is a very common question a lot of non-US IMG ask, and it makes sense because if you pursue USMLE and you want to become a doctor in the US, you have to invest so much time, you have to invest so much money, and you are kind of investing yourself and get yourself into the world of uncertainties. It's not clear whether you can actually make it or not. Even after you complete all these things, there is still risk of you being unmatched. And that feeling is really awful. So it makes sense. That's the reason why I want to address today if USMLE is worth pursuing as a non-US IMG. The second reason why I create this video is because I actually have not seen a single video out there that explain to you what it actually feels like when you have arrived in the destination. I am an internal medicine attending that has been working for 4.5 years. A lot of video out there was described by a resident, and so they have not really complete everything. They haven't really arrived in the final destination, so to speak. But that doesn't mean that I undermine their opinion. They already made it. They match, and then for sure they will become an attending and then arrive where I am right now. But I just want to give you the perspective of me as an internal medicine attending. I'm working as primary care physician and hospitalist per diem. I'm gonna tell you what it felt like becoming an internal medicine, what it felt like to arrive in a destination. I'm just gonna tell you right now that yes, USMLE is worth it. I'm going to explain you the reasons. I'm going to explain to you also why 2025 is the best time for you to pursue USMLE and try to become doctor in the US for non-US IMG. There are 3 caveats that I would like you to know. Basically, the 3 important considerations, things that you have to keep in mind to make all this argument make sense. So the first caveat is that this would apply better for non-US IMG that come from lower income countries or developing countries. If you're coming from Western countries, maybe the Europe, maybe Australia, maybe New Zealand, this probably not really resonate with you very well. So this is coming from the perspective of a non-US IMG coming from the lower income countries. I come from Indonesia, if you haven't known. The second caveat is that I only provide from the career or jobs perspective. You see, there's a lot of reasons why USMLE might be worth it or might not be worth it because there are so many factors, right? You probably have to do long distance relationships. You have to leave your home country and leave your family behind. Probably some people doesn't like the cuisine here. Probably some people doesn't like the politics situations in the US. So there's a lot of multiple factors and reasons to make whether USMLE is worth it. And I'm not going to talk about the other things like that. I'm going to only talk from the career or job perspective, meaning when you work as a doctor, whether that's worth it or not. The third caveat is the fact that I'm an internal medicine doctor. So maybe if you are family medicine, then it's kind of applied to you as well. But yeah, I'm an internal medicine doctor. So this is coming from somebody who is doing an internal medicine residency and work as internal medicine doctor. Now that we get those caveats out of the way, I want you to keep those things in mind. We can jump into why USMLE is worth it. The first reason is money. And I'm not going to become a hypocrite saying that being a doctor is all about the calling and taking care of people around you, save lives, and you don't need money. No, we all need money. We live in a materialistic world. And having money is power. With money, you can help people, you can help your family, you can help pay your kids' tuitions. By becoming a doctor, you are wealthy enough, and that means you have a financial freedom. It's just this big weight inside you strangling you, and suddenly you break those chains, all this weight coming off from you, and it's very, very relieving. I was in a financial difficulties as well. I don't know what your situations are, but I found that a lot of non-US IMG struggle financially to become a doctor in the US. Well, the same thing. I was living in New York for 3 years. I don't want to spend $1 for a water bottle. I have to walk and then catch the bus, catch the subway every day. I don't know if I have enough money to pay for my apartment and pay for my food for the next day. It's strangling. Having financial difficulties are strangling. And then when I become a resident, it feels somewhat relief. Still difficult, but it's enough. And then once I become attending, all those weights are off. So let's talk a little bit about money, how much you actually make as a doctor in the US. So as a resident. Back then, I was making about $55,000 to $60,000 a year. I work in Illinois, so every state has a different tax system. My take-home pay was around $3,500, and when I become a second year and third year, that's at a little bit more, maybe around 36, 3,700, about 38, 3,900, somewhere around that. It's enough to pay for apartment. It's enough for me to kind of enjoy food in restaurant maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks is enough for my vacations. It's definitely enough, and there is a stability there, right? Because you work as a resident, you will always have salary, paycheck every month, so there is stability and it feels good. And then once become the attending, all the weights are off. You can just check in Medscape how much money doctors make. But I would say in general, anyone who managed to become a doctor in the US can easily make $300,000 a year. So even if your base salary is a little bit less than 300,000, maybe 250,000, 220,000. My base salary when I started was kind of close, lower toward under 200,000, and I can still make more than 300,000 that year because I can do some extra work, extra shifts, extra whatever. There is so much unlimited career possibilities in US. You can always make some extra money and you can push it. That's why I said that it doesn't matter now, that every doctors with just a little bit extra work will always get more than 300,000. And it depends on specialties, of course. If you are a specialist like cardiologist, pulmonary critical care, you probably make about $500,000 a year. So that is the amount of money that you make as a doctor in the US. Now, you remember my first caveat that this perspective would make sense for non-US IMG that coming from a lower income countries or developing countries. You see, because if it's not a non-US IMG, let's say, for the US doctors, it might not make sense for them. Why? Because for US citizens, if they want to become doctor, they have to go for undergrad. That's probably 3 or 4 years. And then they go to medical school. That's another 4 years. Then they become a resident. The tuition for the college is probably around $50,000 a year. And when you go to medical school, it's even more expensive. And I do some little research. Basically, on average, if a US citizen wants to become a doctor in the US, they will have an average loan about 200,000 US dollars. For non-US IMG, the amount of money that you spend is not going to be more than 50,000. It shouldn't be more than $50,000, the whole thing. Typically, you probably can spend about $20,000 from the beginning to finish to become a doctor in the US. That's still a lot of money because we all come from a lower income countries. But the investment economically makes sense because once you become a resident, you make 55 or 60,000. Now it's actually more, I think $65,000 a year. And then once you become attending, you make more. So the investment return is pretty quick and it makes sense. So that is why the caveat, the first caveat, is important. So that is the first reason why it's worth it, money. The second reason why USMLE is worth it, and this is more important than money, that is time. Yes, time. There's a lot of flexibility working as a doctor in the US. I'm going to give you an example of a hospitalist. Hospitalists can work typically 7 on, 7 off. On those 7 days, they're working, and then the next 7 days, they're not working. They're completely off. There are also options of 14 days on, 14 days off. And if you put on average, let's say, it's typically not 12 hours, but let's say you work 12 hours on those 7 days. Okay, that turns into 84 hours. And then the next week you're off. So on average, you can average, you work about 40 hours a week. And that is pretty good. Now, what about primary care? Primary care typically work 40 hours a week. We usually have 4 days on and then 1 day off for an admin day to complete some messaging and then do some paperwork, etc. Now, I'll give you my personal work schedule. I don't do 4 days on, 1 day off. I do 5 days, but short days. My work schedule, including commute, is start 7:45 and then I got home 3:15 or 3:20. The reason why I got home 3:15, 3:20 is because I have to pick up my daughter at the bus stop and she's kind of slow. That turns into 6.5 hours a day for 5 days. So if you do that calculations, it's a little bit less than 40 hours. And that's pretty much my job. I do hospital shifts per diem. I typically do a 7-hour shifts. In order for me to make it $300,000 a year, a little bit more than $300,000 a year, I need to take about 20 shifts. And so if you do the math, 20 shifts times 7 hours, so 140 hours a year. If you divide it by 12, that means there'll be an extra about 12 hours a month. If you divide it by weeks, there are 4 weeks in each month on average, and an extra 3 hours. So I do a little bit over 40 hours, maybe 43, 44 hours a week, and I make more than $300,000 a year. Maybe in your country, there are people who say, well, actually, I can also make the same amount of money as the US doctors make. But yeah, how much time you have to spend working in order to make that amount of money? It's really hard to beat that. And time is one of the most important currency because it's limited. You can always make more money, but your time is limited. It runs out. It's like fuel. So that is the second reason, time. So we have money, we have time. And the third reason why USMLE is worth it is because of the meaning. It's the satisfaction of doing your job. When I was back in Indonesia, it was very difficult because our resources are limited. Let's say somebody have breast cancer and they have no money and they use universal coverage. It takes months until they get a scan or MRI or a PET scan, things like that. So they cannot really survive. But here in the US, I have crazy case. Let me share this with you because this is, I think, one of the amazing case. I have a case of patients, a young lady who suddenly can't walk, suddenly have difficulty speaking, finally come to the hospital, get the scan, and there was like multiple mass inside the brain. And eventually she got infected, have aspiration pneumonia, needs to be intubated, but they can do everything for her. They do a brain biopsy and found that the patient has CNS lymphoma. It's a CNS lymphoma. So they start the treatment right away with all the chemotherapy and other things that she needs. And then she eventually get better. She was extubated. Well, she still needs a tracheostomy, but she's extubated, kind of. And then she has a PEC tube, and she has to go to the rehab. After that, she followed up with the oncologist and found that the treatment is not working very well. So they put her on a CAR T-cell therapy. The lady doesn't have any money, but there is a financial aid that helps patients who doesn't have money. So she managed to go to Boston, stay in a hotel to get the treatment, and she was miracle of Western medicine. She was cured. The trache's off, PEC tube's off. She can eat again. It was amazing. And that's just one example, but there are so many of my patients that I can simply refer for ablation, for example, a pacemaker. These are kind of like a simple things here, but it could be a big deal if you're coming from a lower income country or developing countries because the resources are limited. But you can always go infinity and beyond for some form of exaggeration here for your patients. So there's a lot of satisfaction treating your patients because you able to see it at the end of what happened to the patients. And a lot of them, if they are on the right support, usually the family support is very important. If they have enough support, then they can get better. And that's a lot of satisfaction. So we have three things that make USMLE worth pursuing: money, margin, which is time, and meaning. Now I'm going to give you some extra stuff why USMLE is worth it. The fourth reason is the work culture. The work culture is great. The work environment is great. People respectful each other. There is no big hierarchy or gap between the junior, senior, and attending. They're almost like friends, but we still stay respectful to each other. And you are non-US IMG, we respect elderly, we respect people, seniors, we respect people. So that's what makes a lot of attendings here loves non-US IMG, loves working with them, because non-US IMG typically have good work ethics and very respectful, and you just maintain that respect. Even if you have leaving your home country and then living in a foreign country like in the US, you will still maintain that respect. And people are very respectful. They are all helpful. All they think about is one thing: the patient. They want to help the patient. So we work together to help the patients. It would be difficult even if you make good money, you have a lot of time, and then there's a satisfaction in your work. But when you go to work, it becomes such a drag because your work environment is hostile and you don't want to have that. But you don't have that in the US. There's no blaming culture. They're all supportive and they're all respectful. It's an amazing place to work. And I'm going to give you the last reason, the final reason here why USMLE is worth pursuing, is because of a sense of accomplishment, a sense of achievement, because you have to work your way from the ground up. Like I work from having financial difficulties, I have to overcome that. I have to overcome the relationship difficulties. I have to overcome the exams. I have to overcome the gaps in language, culture, and the healthcare system when I did my clinical rotations. I need to speak a different language, a different culture, barely able to speak English when I first come to the US, and I have to overcome that and then overcome the interview process, the match process overall, to do the interviews and going through the 3 years of residency. It's just when you arrive at the destination, when you made it, you have this sense of accomplishment that will last you a lifetime. And you can see that in a lot of reactions. There's a lot of reaction videos. People manage to match. They all cry because they know they have worked so hard and you have to do it yourself. No one is going to give it to you. You have to do the work to be able to get there, to be able to match. And when they manage to match, when they get there, they cry. They have this sense of achievement and accomplishment that cannot be replaced by anything else. So those are the 5 reasons why USMLE is worth pursuing. Now I'm going to tell you why 2025 is the best time for you to pursue USMLE and become a doctor in the US. The first reason is simple. Step 1 has become pass and fail. Before it was scored, it was very difficult, but now has become pass and fail. At least relieve a little bit burden from you. It doesn't make it easy. And I always tell my students, even if it's pass and fail, you have to take the step 1 as if it were scored. So you have to give your best. There are 2 reasons. 1, the knowledge of step 1 will last you a lifetime. The second reason is your step 2 CK, which you scored, will be highly correlated with your step 1. So you have to study it very, very well. But at least when I study for my step 1, I didn't really complete my first 8. And I don't think I complete all the U-Boat question. But I study using Kaplan and I study using my flashcard. And my NBME already get close to 250. But I delayed the exam for another couple months because I want to get above 250. I want to get 260. There's no need to do that anymore. You just have to memorize the high yield ones, understand the high yield concepts, and then you can go and then you can move on to step 2. So things are a little bit easier this time. And it saves you a little bit more time so you don't have to spend too long to study. The second reason is step 2 CS is gone. There's no more step 2 CS. Step 2 CS is one of the hard exam, especially if you're not used to the language and the culture, and it's very expensive. And the courses for step 2 CS is also very expensive because it involves an in-person. People need to hire in person to become the patients. It becomes very, very expensive in the US, and now it's gone. So it really saves you a lot of time, at least save you a lot of headache, at least save you a lot of money. And the third reason is because the interview is now mostly virtual. This also saves you a lot of time and money. We used to pay for the accommodations, for the travel, and that's also a lot of money. And that means you have to stay in the US. Now you can do it virtually, and that's really, really safe. And the fourth reason is because now there are so many resources. Now we have AI, we have ChatGPT that really help you study for USMLE. It's so easy now to learn and understand the concepts. There's so many resources out there. There's YouTube videos now, it's everywhere that can help you study for USMLE. We have social media like LinkedIn where you can network with other physicians. There is Doximity. So there are so many resources now that you can use to study, whether that's to study for USMLE, whether you're doing your research or finding a clinical rotations. There's just so much resources. The path toward becoming a doctor in the US becomes clear and clear. So that is the video for today. I hope you enjoy it. If you're doing your USMLE, I have a free gift for you. I have a USMLE test taking strategies online course. I address on how to approach the questions in USMLE, how to improve your chance to get your 50-50 questions right, and how you manage your time so you will not run out of time when you do your USMLE. It's free. You can just click down the link description below to get the free online course. Second thing, if you are looking for US clinical rotations, I have the guide for you, USCE Essential Guides for Non-US IMG. I have included 30 plus hospitals that offer rotations for non-US IMG, and that's also free. You can check it out using the link down description below. So that's it, the video for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again in the next video real soon.